Put on a Ike mini flip. It's a little out of that. Good one on a frog. Oh my gosh, look how big his mouth is. To be a 4-pounder, if that thing had a gut, that's like a 5 or a 6. All right, everybody, I want to thank y'all for tuning in to One Objective. We have got a really good show lined up for you guys. We got Justin Largen. He's going to be coming on here shortly, and we're going to be talking about winter fishing. We're going to be talking about kayaking, and then, some of the stuff that Justin Largen's into as well on helping educate people with fishing with the podcast show and all that stuff too. So, but before we get into that, I want to thank everybody that's listened to us for the last several years. I talked about this in the last show. We've been doing this for right at 10 years now. It's phenomenal. It's hard to believe we've been doing it that long. I know we've taken some lulls here and there, and people were wondering if the show is going to continue to keep going. I had a lot of messages about it, and we're here. We're still going. I hope you guys have enjoyed the interviews that we have done so far. We've had some really great guests on, and we got another one on that's going to be a great guest tonight. So, but I want to thank everybody that's helped us out in the last several years of just growing this channel and the support and the comments that we get on these videos and the podcast on all your iTunes, or I say all your podcast platforms that you can listen to going to work or at work and all that. So, but also I want to thank some phenomenal sponsors that we've had over the last several years. And I mean, they've been with us through thick and thin, and they have supported us almost since day one, these sponsors. So I want to thank Missile Baits. They've been with us since day one, basically. John Cruz and Alex and Byron and all them guys over there. They have been such a big supporter of us and everything that we do. And they've helped us out with giveaways and all kinds of stuff. So, but like I say, make sure you go check out Missile Baits. They got some phenomenal soft plastics, anything to cover from, throwing the Missile 48 under docks for something for a slow fall. You can drag it on a Carolina rig. My favorite, the Baby Destroyer and Candy Grass. I love that on a Carolina rig. I love flipping that around grass lines and all that stuff. So make sure you go check out those two baits for sure. We got them on our actually, I don't have them on our website yet. They will be up on our website here soon, probably the coming weeks. But you can go to Missile Baits right now, check them out, and you can buy them from there. Also, Amped Outdoors, they have helped power us through anything from a kayak to a bass boat. I talked about it the other day. When power goes out, we got a battery box set up that we can run cell phone chargers. We can run. I got these little vlogging lights when the power went out. I can have them up and family playing games and stuff like that while we're waiting for the power to come back on. But like I say, they got great customer service. They got a 10-year warranty. You can't beat Amped Outdoors. And also, I want to thank Waterland Sunglasses. They've really helped us out a lot. They got some perfect setups for different frames, different lenses, for all kinds of conditions, because you just never know. I like having about 3 or 4 different pair of sunglasses in the boat. I got some that are clear just for running early morning or at nighttime. They're the bed fisher frame with the clear lens, and then also have my regular bed fishers for when I'm out fishing. I like it because they cover my face up really good on the sides. They don't let no light in. They're super polarized. They do really well. Also got a pair of the Milliken frames, but they got all kinds of different frames, different lenses for no matter the conditions or the occasion. So make sure you go check them out. We'll have a link down below to save yourself 15% on your next order. So make sure you go check that out. Help support the channel, help support our sponsors. So guys, I want to thank y'all for that. But like I say, we're going to go ahead and we are going to go get Justin on, and we're going to let's talk some kayak fishing. What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. I know we were trying to get you on, but you actually just got back last week. Was it last week from fishing down in Florida on Harris Chain, right? Was it last week?
I think it was last week. It feels like a long time ago. But
yeah.
It was fun. I like it there.
Florida is just a whole different world, man. Like it's hard to really have another area in the state that fishes like Florida. Maybe from what I see from like the deltas in California and stuff like that, but like Florida is just totally different. It's nothing I've ever fished in Virginia, anything that's like that.
Yeah, the closest I can think of, there's some stuff on the Potomac, at least in terms of grass, that it reminds me of, and maybe that's why I feel comfortable there, because I lived up around the Potomac, and I love fishing grass. But it's still different. I mean, there's no tides. It's the fish get shallow though, and I I like fishing shallow, so I don't know. I've always enjoyed going down there.
Yeah, and you got alligators, where
Yeah.
Granted, we fished Louisiana and stuff like that with alligators, but it seems like in Florida they don't bother you as bad, or is this curious of you? I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're just scared of people in Florida a little more or what. I don't know.
That's been my experience. Is like I'll come around a corner and there'll be one up sunning on a, and you'll just hear. You won't even necessarily see the gator. You'll just hear it crashing through the sort of wetlands, and then you'll get a glimpse of it as it crashes into the water. But a lot of times I feel like they're running from me down there, unless it's a little bitty one and he's chasing after your frog. Those are the ones that get annoying when you got to worry about them eating your lure and chewing it up.
Yeah, it's funny when me and James went down there a couple years ago and fished the Bass Nation Kayak Series, and I was going up and I seen a big one. I thought it was a log in the water at first, and I was like, I don't remember that being there like 10 minutes ago. And then I get closer and it splashes water and it's big alligator. But we go up and we're coming back down, and James is like, look at that little alligator. So we're going up there trying to catch it, like scoop it up with a net. Like, I want to catch it. I want to hold this little alligator. And all of a sudden, man, that thing got to making the noise that them baby alligators make. And then the other one started making a noise. And I told James, I was like, look, dude, I seen a big alligator in here earlier. Like, we need to leave this thing alone. Mama's somewhere around here, so we better just leave her alone.
Call it mama.
Yeah. So yeah, I never got to hold one, but I'm hoping for that chance one time to go down there and just catch a little one and hold it. So I don't know. That's just the thing. I mean, I can't hold a big one because I don't know how to handle them too well, but a little one, I think I can handle it.
I saw some guys catch one on purpose at Fork that was much bigger than I would have liked to tangle with. And I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want my bait torn up. I'm not trying to bother the alligator. I know that in some states they got signs, no harassing the alligator.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've never had a crazy encounter with one. You heard Russ's story a couple years ago?
No.
I think I can't remember if it was Eufaula or if it was Santee, but it was somewhere not Florida. I remember not Florida. And apparently he had one under the kayak that came up and bumped it like hard. And that would have, I didn't need to change the underwear at that point.
I was going to say, I'd stained my drawers up on that one. Like
it'd have been bad. I mean, I'm good as long as it's kind of like snake for me anyway. Snakes, I'm not going to try to pick up snakes. I don't really like them. As long as I see them and I know they're there, we're good. But like those times when you're wading a river and all of a sudden, like you see one, swim upstream, like between your legs, and that's when you shriek like a little girl and run.
Yeah. Especially when you walk through, like when you're wading the river and you're going through that grass. And then like, sometimes the grass feels funny when it hits your leg anyway. And you're kind of like, what was that? And then you go up a little bit more and then you see one and you're like, yeah, I've had moments where I go in girl mode and like, I'm dragging a Hobie through the weeds. Like it ain't nothing, I'm running. I'm like, oh God.
Oh God. I think the worst time I ever had, it was a duck blind up on the Potomac. And, it had the camo netting all over it. And I was throwing a swim jig and got a little too close and hung the swim jig in the netting. And I'd seen a couple snakes out already that day. So I'm like, I know it's, it's a nice warm day. They're out. But as I get closer, I'm kind of looking and all right, yeah, we're clear. I get right up against it, pop the net out. And then it was almost like there was two levels to it. And the upper level is about head height. And I just look down and see one coiled up like right next to my head. And you get that, like, I don't know, that chill down your spine. And I shrieked and like instinctively like tucked into a ball and like dropped down. And there was on that lower, 2x4, whatever, there was another one coiled up. And then it's just like, hey, get away. Fortunately, nobody else was around to witness that. There was no GoPro footage or anything like that. But man, I'm good as long as I see them. It's when they surprise me that it's not good.
Yeah, it's not a fun moment. Louisiana was pretty bad with them when we went down there years ago and fished. That was the only time I fished Louisiana. And we went down there and fished the KBF national championship. And then, down there at Caddo and all that. and they were just everywhere in the trees. But when we went to Santee, was it 2 years ago? That's when Russ Snyder won that one, and it was horrible fishing for us. I could not get nothing going on Santee, and we get back in this slough somewhere, man, and it was like every little tree limb hanging down had a snake in it. Yeah. I mean, we're way back there. And finally, I come up on one. I'm like, James, look at the size of this freaking snake. It looked like a daggone boa. I mean, it was huge. And I'm like trying to get like above it and over it to take this picture because they're chill. It's cold that day. And they're just chilling. And when I go to take that picture, he just drops. And he drops down and hits the front of my kayak because I didn't realize my kayak had gone up through it. And then it hit the front and went in the water, man. I'm telling you what, I almost give him that kayak. Like, I'd been like Jesus running on water going to James's kayak. I'm not done with this. Like, but no, yeah, it's definitely an experience when you go out and fish those back sloughs in different areas like that down south. You never know what you're gonna encounter. You know, you talking about fork and talking about alligators. To be honest with you, granted, when I fished it was cold, but I did not know there were alligators in Fork. You know, now okay.
But there are a few. I saw a couple up in this one kind of backwater, dirty shallow water area, and there was the guys at I can't remember I don't think the place is even there anymore where I camped. I think it's changed hands. But there's like the locals were all talking about, oh yeah, there's a 14-foot alligator that lives back in there, and I didn't see that one, but the ones that I saw were enough to where I wasn't gonna go mess with them.
Yeah,
it's like I see them, and you guys stay over there, and I'll fish this side of the creek.
Yeah, you can have them fish over. I don't need them. So, well, let's kind of dig into Florida a little bit. How was that event for you? Before we go any further in conversation, how let's start off with Florida. How did that one go for you?
I can't complain, honestly. I had a day of practice, and I was a little worried about that because I know a lot of the guys are getting more than that, 3 to 5 days, and there's so many guys. I mean, there's local hammers, and then there's just the kind of ringers that from all over that just doesn't seem to matter where they go, they always catch them. So I was a little nervous about the practice time, but I'm like, my first bite, the first day of practice, only day of practice, was a 7.5 or 7.25. It was 22 something, and I'm thinking, hopefully I didn't jinx myself or anything, and then I went up in one of these little creeks that flows between some of these lakes, and the second bite was a 19 something, almost 20, and I'm thinking, okay, I know where I'm fishing, and I kind of put the little chatterbait down and tried to do some other stuff, and I caught plenty of fish. So I really can't complain. I had a few mistakes that, everybody loses fish. I had a couple that I would have liked to have back. I'd like a do-over on that second day. I feel like the lake that I was on was better than I showed on the second day.
Yeah. And it seemed like some guys had some tough day. There was guys that, you look at like Robert Brown, for instance, he had a tougher day on day one, but then killed it on day two. You see that. That's why it's so hard to win these things, because you got to be so consistent on 2 days. Like, it's really tough to win. And it's such a mind game on day one, because you don't want to blow your water out and like just catch everything. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But when guys are catching 100 and some inches, you're like, man, I feel like I got to catch them, like, and got to keep going and putting pressure on these areas. But yeah. So how did it end up going for you on both days, and where'd you finish at on that one? Because I forgot. I was looking through it. I forgot where you finished at on that one.
32nd, I think, was what it was. Yeah. I had I had 82 the second day, 93 the first day. First day was a lot more fun. Yeah. We had a little bit of wind blowing into my area, and I caught a lot of fish, real shallow on that little chatterbait mini max. It wasn't, I don't know, it was just kind of simple. I mean, like gunner's reel anywhere, just throwing it visible stuff. I didn't even have a graph with me, just throwing it visible. I fished the Kissimmee edges a little bit, but a lot of the fish were inside. It's almost like at least the lake that I was on, there's kind of like an outside Kissimmee edge, then a berm, and the water would drop down. You'd have a little bit a deeper water kind of on this inside lane. right up against the bank. And I think the fish were moving into that stuff. The day before I was catching them out a little deeper, but Saturday they were in some skinny water. And then I ran up in the creeks and I got bit in those too. So it was, I felt like I couldn't do anything wrong the first day.
Yeah.
Second day was a little different. Weather was, I thought the wind was supposed to blow out of the north and kind of into my area about like it had the first day. I thought that moving bait bite was still going to be there. And it was slick calm. And we had a little bit of sun at points throughout the day, but it wasn't, the water was pretty dirty, even when it was super skinny water. I wanted to sight fish a little bit, and I did get one good sight fishing, but it just really, the conditions weren't right when the majority of the day when that, it was thick clouds and not really any sunshine. It was hard to sight fish. But I felt like that, pitching plastics is what I ended up doing. I couldn't get anything to eat, those moving baits. And probably if I had a chance to do it again, I would run to the other end of the lake where the wind was hitting and try the moving baits. And I didn't really go in the creeks at all. That was something else I think I could have done. One of these creeks ran for, I don't know, it was over 2 miles, I think 2.5 miles connecting these lakes. And I'd never been in those little places before, but the current was really ripping. It reminded me of some of these tidal places when you get that sort of that latter part of the tide where it's just, or the first part of the tide change where it's just really ripping through there, or like fishing for smallmouth. I'd never fished Florida with current ripping like that.
Wow.
But I think I probably could have run further than I went the first day. I'd had to change my setup a little bit. There were a lot of those skinny places, overhanging limbs, and I had the rods up. I would have had to, take a few rods back to the car and kind of maneuver a little differently. But I think if I'd run in the creeks, I'd have ended up probably doing a little bit better that way too. But, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah. That's the thing about tournament fishing, man. There's so many things you can really beat yourself up on after the tournament, especially after you listen to other people, what they called them on. You're kind of like, oh man, why did I not? But, you just kind of take that and you pack it away and, save it for another time. And sometimes that condition might not ever come back up again. You know what I mean? But like you got it there. Just, I remember last time I did this. Let me try it this way this time, So that's the thing about fishing. You learn something no matter if you have a good day or a bad day.
Yep, that's true. There's always some takeaway.
Yeah.
That, if you look hard enough, you can find something.
And some days you're just kind of like, okay, I suck at this. Like, I think I need to find a different sport.
That was my whole year last year.
Yeah.
I honestly, as much as I would have liked to do better. I had the bites to probably right around the cut line. And that, it's a few places better, but to go down on 1 day of practice and still top 30 out of 2, I forget what the total was. It was well over 200.
Yeah.
It's hard to be mad at that.
Yeah. It was a very strong field of good anglers. You know what I mean? So
I've had a lot worse finishes with a lot fewer people in them. So
yeah. So what's your plans for the rest of the season? Or how many are you going to fish a lot more tournaments this year, or what is your plans for this year, shall we say?
I'm hoping to. I'm not sure exactly which ones yet. It's killing me that I'm not going to be there at Fork in a couple weeks. It's that I've had so much fun down there. It seems like every time I've gone, I've had at least one big fish. I've had a couple of good tournaments where I cut checks, and it reminds me of Briary Creek. I think they built Briary to be like Fork. So it feels, I don't know, I'm comfortable there, and, I can take my D-bomb or a destroyer and just go flip every tree in there, and I'm happy. Plenty of targets.
Yeah.
So to not be there kind of stings. But I'm hoping to make it to Dale Hollow. I wasn't sure when the schedule came out. It's a highland reservoir, not my strength, deep, really clear. I was watching some of the footage from the MLF guys last year, what they were doing, and sitting out over the deep water with live scope, and that I have zero shot if that's the way that they're going to be caught. But I'm thinking with the time of year, there may be some fish shallow spawning, and that's something I'm pretty comfortable with. So we'll see what happens. At the very least, I'm hoping I can get down there, get a day or two of practice, and not having to drive as far this time.
Yeah.
And hopefully, learn something. It maybe catch a big smallmouth or two.
Oh yeah, they got them in there too, man. They got some nice ones in Del Hollow. And I ain't trying to step on the toes of this. So Steve, if you do listen to this, I'm not stepping on any toes with it. But what is your thoughts about the season and how the schedule is? Like, I mean, to me, I know that they were trying to reach out and get some of the West Coast guys some events. I understand that. And there was a few guys that made the trip out there, from Georgia and all that stuff in Tennessee to fish it. But if you really look at the schedule, man, it's really hard to chase AOI with the way the schedule is, not unless you have a job where you can take unlimited time or you got a lot of money, Yeah.
And I kind of see both sides of it. I understand, like if I were Steve looking at it, you've had record participation last year. I mean, you're putting 200 people in every event. So I could see trying to expand and grow it. They added a tournament. I'm sure they would have liked to have a little more participation, but I went out once to, California to Clear Lake with KBF, and the tournament coincided with one of the local trails. The name's escaping me of their trail out there, but there might have been 100 people that fished that local trail, but I don't even know if it was 100 guys that were in that KBF tournament, and that was on one of the best lakes in the country. A place that if they're going to travel anywhere, like that's a place to travel to. But it's just, I don't know. I kind of feel bad for the guys out west because you've got such a big gap between like their fishing community and then the East Coast fishing community. And the East Coast one's bigger, so it makes sense if you're looking at numbers to have the tournaments over here.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I can see the wanting to grow it, but in general, the schedule requires a lot of driving. But maybe we're at a point where there's enough guys that are willing to chase it and try to make 3 to 5 events. I don't know that I'm in that boat this year. Dale Hollow is going to be relatively close, and then Champlain is the other one that I've kind of got marked where I went up there once before. That place is a lot of fun, and I'd like to experience that one again. So I can justify kind of those 3, I think. But beyond that, I don't know what else I'm going to be able to do. Like Texas is just so far anymore.
Yeah.
And I've been a number of times. Fork, I'd do it in a heartbeat, but it's hard to justify and it's probably more of a personal issue for me.
Yeah.
Because if it's not a springtime event, if it's a later in the year deal, I feel like I'm, post spawn, if those fish are going to be out deep, I feel like I don't have a great chance to win or even cut a check. It's just, it doesn't suit me as well. And my style, I'm beating the bank. And if it's too hot to where there's not going to be a good group of them up shallow, I'm just going to get my butt kicked and spend a lot of money in gas. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does. I mean, and like say, I understand where he's coming from. I almost, and maybe we're putting feelers out there. I don't know. I almost feel like there should be 2 different divisions now. But now you got to find somebody trustworthy to run, because Steve can't run all the way to California to do another division. You're out west to do a whole nother division and this division. You know what I mean? So you got to find somebody trustworthy to even run that and keep it. Steve's got to oversee it, but keep it going. So I understand where they're coming from as well on that. But like, I just feel like I do feel bad for the West Coast guys like Shane Lamont and I can't, for some reason, it's slipping my mind, some of the California guys, but Shane's just one of my buddies. So I know where he comes from, and I listen to him talking like, there's no love out here for us, like,
yeah.
And you listen to,
go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's true for the boat guys too. It's not just the kayak space.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had trails, just in this off season that went away. There's just no Western division for some of these trails anymore. And it sucks, but if these organizations have got to drive a trailer halfway across the country to do, to do the weigh-ins and all that. I get why they're looking at the bottom line, and they don't have to drive as far to pick a place. They're going to have better attendance. I get why the trails aren't doing these California trips.
Well, yeah, and just anything in general to do in California is expensive. So, like, I don't know what it would probably cost to have a permit to have a tournament on some of them lakes. You know what I mean? I don't know. So, but yeah, no, I get it. And in a sport where it's so sponsor driven, where you see a lot of these series washing out because they don't have the money to continue to keep it going, to keep providing the big payouts to keep the people coming. You know what I mean? Because then it's eventually just getting kind of to a club level where whatever's in the pot at the entry fee, that's what we're just kind of dividing up like a local tournament. You know what I mean? So I do get it, but like say, this sport's really sponsor driven, and the sponsor dollars have kind of dried up this last year and this year. I don't know how it's going to be. It's a lot of political changes. There's a lot of uncertainty with people, and so people are a little kind of hesitant to spend the money. And I've seen it just in the industry itself with just with our business. You know what I mean? Like, things have cut back a little bit. We're still doing okay, but things have cut back. And with your job, you might have seen it too. I don't know. With the fishing industry in general, it's kind of cut back a little bit.
Yeah, so, the kayak sales and even to a point, I think the tackle sales in general, it's, when the economy's tight, if it's buying groceries or buying the latest and greatest lure that comes out at ICAST, if you got to make a choice between those two, most people are going to be getting the groceries.
I might be hungry for the week.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that camp too, but I know that I'm in the minority on that.
Yeah.
And kayak sales, just from, and I wasn't on the sales side of it, like when the pandemic hit and everybody got locked inside for a couple of years. But from the different people that I've talked to, business was booming, and you couldn't get stuff on the shelf. The demand was so high, and it's kind of a perfect storm where everybody gets released. You kind of go back to whatever you're doing before, and the people that spent the money on the kayaks and maybe never even put it in the water, it was something cool they wanted to try. They can still socially distance, get out and enjoy nature. And, I think it didn't take with some people. So you've got a huge secondary market out there, Facebook Marketplace. There's
booming with kayaks.
Yeah. And stuff that's new people, I remember seeing somebody had one of those one objective trailers, a brand new Hobie PA, been on the water one time. And I'm looking at it like, man, that's a lot of money that somebody spent. And just, you want to, I get their perspective. If you're not using it, you just want to try and get a return on it. But that's going to make it tough for any of the mom and pop, places that are trying to sell kayaks. It's the demand just isn't there for those fishing kayaks when you can get so many of them, for cheaper, and they're basically in the same condition.
Yeah, it is. It's a crazy market right now, and we were talking about this during COVID because we sold a few kayaks. We sold some Crescents for a while. We were a Crescent dealer, and then what happened was Crescent had so many dealers, and when COVID hit, they couldn't supply them all, so they had to cut back. And being as we were a new dealer, they cut us first because they're going to keep their older ones that they've had for a while. So, and we were selling, we couldn't keep them, man. We'd get them in, and they were just gone instantly. And I told James, I said, man, something's going to give here. Eventually, this bubble is going to pop, and you're going to have a couple things going to happen. One, the used kayak sales are going to be through the roof, and then when it comes to tackle, where it's hard to get stuff, these tackle stores are going to order stuff in bigger bulks, and then that's what's happened. Everybody's got so much of it now that they don't need to order anymore. You know what I mean? Like, because they're still sitting on a lot of stuff that they've had for a couple of years now. So, I think the outdoor industry in general, not just, I've talked to people that's in the bike industry and bicycles, where they were selling like crazy. And now you look, there's the used market's crazy with used bikes. People want to do it for a little while. They had to go back to work. Now they ain't got time. So I think it's the industry. It's going to take. I think it's in a lull right now. And like with Hobie, I know Hobie had some stuff going on. They had to pull out from. They don't have their trail now, so it kind of opens things up to the KBF and to Bass now on their series. So like. Yeah. I think that's where I was just kind of looking at that side, kind of getting back to the whole schedule. I was looking at that. I was like, man, that's a wide open door for them to kind of have a couple more events out west and then have the East and West Coast thing. But it might happen next year. I don't know. I mean, that could be something they were just kind of feeling out and see what it's going to do. But no, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Bass, if they stick with 6 next year or if 2026, if the idea is to continue to add, and then I'm curious to see at what point, they kind of hit, their sort of happy medium and, kind of what they land on. What they're doing is working now though. I mean, when you can, I think Hobie had 150 at the last, why is my brain not working? Harris chain. Mm-hmm. I think it was, what was it? 20, was it 23 or no, 24? 24, they had 150, I think, down on Harris.
23 when we fished it. So, 24, when they had,
And I think they were, I don't know, maybe like 115. I don't think it was as good in 23. I think the numbers increased in 24, and then Bass, tacked on, 75?
Yeah.
When they went. So it's, that's a huge turnout for Florida. Dale Hollow, kind of in the southeast. I'm curious to see what happens there, and just kind of where the series go. I haven't talked to Chad in a while, but from what it sounded like, what I was seeing on social media and the talk kind of at the end of last year was, they were going to focus real heavy on some of the challenge series, the online monthlies. There's no trail series this year.
Yeah,
I think they're doing their championship in the fall, but we'll see. That could change next year too. But it definitely feels weird from the couple years where I was traveling and doing a ton of tournaments. It's like you had to pick between trails on some weekends. I mean, national trails. There was a Bass and a Hobie, or a Bass and a KBF going on the same weekend. And it's just a very different feel where you got kind of 6 national tournaments, and there's plenty of other local trails out there. And I think it's good that they're doing well, that more of these are popping up.
Yeah.
But it's weird not seeing those big money tournaments all over the place like we had for a while.
It was nice because that's when we fished. We had Fork, and then we had Toledo Bend right after. So a lot of people, we went down there, we fished Fork, and then we had another Airbnb at Toledo Bend. So we left Fork, had a good event there, and then went to Toledo Bend, and fished that, which was totally different fishing. It's totally different body of water. And, but yeah, I remember that. I mean, and I remember Hobie. I mean, man, they were selling out. I mean, there was a couple of times where you had to sign up quick to even get in the event. Like they were selling.
It was insane. I was at one event. Was it Smith? I think I was at a Bassmaster. Smith was a Bassmaster, but I remember being at that tournament and in practice, like sitting there, like trying to get service way up this creek. And because I knew if I didn't get in right then, like in the first 10 minutes, I wasn't going to get into the Hobie. And it was, if you weren't there right when they opened it up, it was like, I don't know, it was like pick your band. I don't know, Taylor Swift or whoever, like when they announced, tickets available. It's like, if you weren't there right when they dropped, you're screwed.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like that. And I'm glad that settled down, but it was good for the sport there for a while. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but I'm glad that settled down a little bit, because it's not fun when you're trying, especially people like, you guys that were traveling and fishing these things. That was kind of your job there for a little while. You know what I mean? And like, if you didn't have a chance to get in them, you know what I mean? Like that's tough. So I'm kind of glad that settled down a little bit, but yeah, it does look like it's on an incline. I've even noticed it with bass boat tournaments here lately, where some of them are they're backing off on the trail, the amount of tournaments they're doing. And the traveling ain't as far now. There might be local, like you got some that are just on Smith. You got some that might be on, just Smith and Bugs. They're not traveling to these different lakes anymore. They're kind of keeping it more tight. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Maybe next year it'll get better and more, they'll have more tournaments, kayak wise and bass boat wise and all that stuff. So, but anyway, let's get off the doom and gloom stuff right now and talk about bass. So, you primarily do everything kayak. I mean, have you thought about switching over to the boat side or has been there any thought, because there's events you can go fish as co-anglers like the BFLs and all that stuff.
I did the co-angler thing. I want to say it was 2008, 2009. I forget which year, but one of those years I did I don't even know if they still have the same divisions. I think it was Northeast and there was another one like Shenandoah, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just fished as a co. It meant a couple tournaments on the Potomac, Smith Mountain Lake, I think Bugs, Gaston, like pretty much, stuff that's relatively local. And I enjoyed it. I definitely learned a lot doing those. I kind of got away from it. I got to a point where I wouldn't do them unless they were on the Potomac. And then after a while, I got even more, I don't know. It wasn't, I think my expectations were just too high. I was doing it thinking, hey, I can make some money in this tournament. And it's so much when you're a co-angler is based on your draw. There's things you can do, if somebody's, fishing docks or bed fishing or something like that, there's stuff you can do to still catch fish behind them, something totally different. But I got discouraged with that whole where it was almost like if I had a good, I was going to have a good event. And then it just, I got discouraged with some of the ones where you'd get a guy who's like, well, I've never fished here before. I fished here once. I'm just hoping to catch a fish to get points so I can qualify for the regional or something like that. And I'm like, and even the Potomac, it was fun because it's grass fishing. So I felt like, I'm just looking where he's flipping and I'm going to flip, to a different patch of milfoil. But even then, you get a couple of guys that, it's bad draws. And then I remember having one guy ask me, well, where do you think we should go? And I'm like, well, where I want to go, you can't get to with this boat.
Yeah.
Like we can't get in there. And it just, I kind of hit a point where I was like, you know what, I could have gone out today and just fun fished and had a great day. And, maybe I wouldn't have smashed them, but I'd have had 10, 15 pounds, something like that. And instead I paid money and rode around in a bass boat all day and just, to try to get a bite or two. And so I don't mean to sound all negative about the BFLs or fishing as a co-angler, because I think there's a huge advantage to that. Like you can learn a lot from guys doing that, like watching a guy and kind of seeing stuff that I know. Even for me, like watching a video it's different when you're in person watching somebody. You can pick up on some different stuff. So there's value to it, but you got to be doing it for the right reason. And I don't think I've ever did the co-angler thing for the right reason.
Yeah.
I like being in control, and it's if I suck, it's because I suck. I can't blame anybody else.
Yeah. When I fished the BFLs, it was always, I fished them as a boater, but I always felt like I'm like, especially if I have a good practice, I'm like, all right, I tell them I'm on some fish, but then they're like, oh man, me and my partner, we really sacked them, man. We got 16, 17 pounds, and I'm like, well, I don't know, man. I might have like 12, 13, 14 pounds, but I don't know how good my spot is because I didn't catch everything, So,
yeah.
And now I'm feeling like I'm trying not to backboat them. So I'm more focused on trying to make sure I'm fair with everybody when I do it. And then I don't feel like I fish is right. And like I talk to other people like, man, you can't worry about that stuff. You go catch your fish and you do what you need to do. And I'm like, I'm just not, I know they pay good money to fish this thing too, like I'm just, so
it's a weird spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I was telling James. I said, I might fish another BFL or two, but I really enjoy the tournaments where there's no co-anglers or it's a partnership deal, we're fishing together to get this limit. If not, I'm just like, I just much rather fish an event where there is no co-angler. Like I hate being like that, but I just don't feel like having a random dude in my boat. And some people, man, I don't think they're to try to be malicious. Some people are very clumsy and spill stuff, and like they just don't take care of your stuff. And I've seen that before too. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to, if I do this, but so you've tried the BFLs and you just kind of like, man, I'm sticking to the kayak and stuff. I really like this.
If they ever make a bass boat that's the same price as the kayaks, I'm in. But
yeah,
but I don't know if I'll be in a point where I can responsibly afford to drop, $80,000 on a bass boat.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I could see some of the aluminum rig, something like a tracker maybe, but the full on like competition boat, I don't know if I'll ever be in one of those.
Now, I looked at a Ranger the other day. I was like, I was just I was window shopping on the internet, and I was just looking. And I seen this boat because it matched my truck. I'm like, oh man, that thing would be nice. And I get to look, and it's reduced because it was a leftover, and it was 94,000. And I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to wait for them to reduce that some more because they ain't coming home with me at that price. That's just, it really is crazy to me that we're willing to spend that much money to go catch a little green bass to win,
and then let it go.
Yeah, let it go.
The other part.
Yeah, and then you're going to get 1,000 if you win, independent on the event you have. You're going to get between $700 to $1,000 in these club events, and you might make one or two of your boat payments with it, But then again, you just burn all that gas doing it, so you're not even going to do that. So
yeah, in a nutshell, like you just summarized why I like kayaks, because it gets me out there. I can still kind of, we're not fishing for big money the same way that the elite guys or the Bass Pro Tour guys are, but we can kind of scratch the competitive itch. You get out there and have fun still, and a little more affordably for an average guy anyway.
Yeah. And you can make it. I mean, you look at Drew Gregory. You can make kayaking as cheap as you really want, and I'm not saying he's a cheap guy. He's really good at what he does with the small amount of stuff that he carries. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when we stayed with him up there at Wolf and Fox a couple of years ago, and I'm looking, I'm like, dude, is that all you're carrying? And he's like, yeah. I mean, he smashed him. You know what I mean? He did a really good job. Did he even win that event?
Second or third, I think.
Yeah. I can't remember.
I remember Calvin won it because I stayed with Calvin later that year.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember if it was Drew Christine or Christine Drew, but he was in the top 3 for that event.
Yeah.
With probably like 3 rods and 4 baits, maybe.
Yeah. One Plano box with 4 baits in it, and I'm like, I got my kayak loaded with stuff here, and I'm like, I don't even know what I need to throw. Like, but yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about kayak fishing. You can make it as cheap as you want. You don't have to have the graphs. You don't have to have all that stuff. Just fish your strengths. Now, like you say, there are times when, like you're talking about, spring fishing is great for you. They're up on the banks. You like, when they get summer and they move off, it's going to be tough for you. You can still catch them, but it's just tougher than the guy that's going out there with live scope and catching them. So, but I mean, you can make it as cheap as you want. You can make it expensive as you want. We've rigged some kayaks for guys that were astronomical. I'm scared to give them the price. Like, dude, this is what it's going to cost, and some of them are like, I think I'm going to wait. Some are like, okay, and I'm like, and they've never had them in the water before, I'm like, I might want to take it in the water and just see how you like it first, before we go dump a lot of money in this boat. And some people that's just what they want, so you can make it as expensive as you want. And people look at us and they're like, man, you got so much money in your kayaks. Well, a lot of that was just advertisement piece. Like, hey, look, this is what we can do for you kind of deal. It's a show model. But, a lot of times it's all that stuff we don't even really use that much because we find ourselves back out there fishing the bank, fishing docks, fishing, all the stuff that we like to fish. And you don't need all that stuff. So, but yeah. Now, so let's kind of get into some wintertime fishing. What is your main spot? I know I see a lot of your posts. You don't tell me the exact lakes that you're fishing, but what are some of the areas that you love to fish this time of the year?
Honestly, I have not fished as much since I've been back in Roanoke in this time of year as I used to when I was in Northern Virginia. Because in Northern Virginia, I felt like I had a cheat code. There were warm water discharges that were coming into parts of that river. And, that water stayed more or less 60 degrees year round, at least the water coming in. And it's going to, well, I don't know if dilute's the right word, but you get 50-degree water in some of these places, and they're not secrets, and I think most guys know about them. But I liked it because I could still go catch fish shallow, kind of doing the same thing. I think I spoiled myself, or probably stunted my growth as a fisherman up there, just because you can go catch fish shallow year round, and it's not necessarily always the best way, getting way back up in the skinny stuff. But man, it's fun for me anyway.
Yeah.
So I've got to get better with the electronics, and I've finally got a decent unit, one with side scan on it. So my goal in November, I got out more probably than I have in years. And then December, I only got out once in January, but December, I made a few trips out on Smith, and I'm getting to like that lake a little bit. I feel like it's there's a lot of big fish in it. Dude caught I know at least one over 10 got caught already this year.
Yeah, 10-3 or 10-3-5 or something like that.
Yeah, I think just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And I saw some other guys, a bunch of 20-pound stringers coming out of that lake. So it's a good time of year for Smith. It's definitely, I know there's guys that go out there and ping a minnow, and at some point, maybe later this year, I'll kind of get in on that game. But I just know this time of year, it's going to be a little tougher if I'm trying to beat the bank. You gotta try and find the docks that are a little bit in deeper water. Those drop off areas where the fish can move up and not have to move as far. There's definitely stuff you can do, but this is the time of year where I want to get out in the water and kind of scratch the cabin fever a little bit. And then I'm just dreaming for another 30 days or so when they start to make those migrations and you start getting those big stupid ones up shallow, and kind of in my wheelhouse. But it is to pick one place, Smith.
Yeah. And it is tough this time of the year without, I look back at the things I've did, and I told James, I said, this year I'm changing it. I'm going back to old school. I'm still going to ping, but I'm going to go back to things I used to throw, my Carolina rigs, my crankbaits, jigs. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up with live scope now, just throwing a drop shot during summertime, or finding a brush pile, dropping a drop shot on or something, and I don't mind doing that, but I really do enjoy going up on a bank, throwing a chatterbait or throwing a crankbait. And what happens is you get up and you start doing that, and then you pan out. You're like, let me look out here in the deep water real quick, just see if I see anything. You're like, oh, there's a bunch of them. And you go out there and you fit, and all of a sudden you're like, fish for 30 minutes. Like, it's like fishing for a bedding fish that that's probably not going to bite, but you might be able to get the bite, so you're kind of out there fishing around for a while. But I do enjoy live scope, but there's also a time I'm like, I don't need to cut it on. Like, I just need to just cut all my electronics off and go, because this is the time of year where I like to get up around the jerk baits. You get up around them docks, like you say, the deeper docks, throwing jerk baits and flipping jigs around, and just kind of, but the thing about it is, like, you going up and you're throwing that, and then you're like, man, they ain't biting nothing. Like, what's going on? And then you kind of turn the graph on. You're like, okay, well, there they are. They're on the inside of the dock a little bit now. They're pushed further up in there, or you're like, oh, there they are. They're off the point a little bit further, So, and then here you are. You're back in the circle again of chasing the minnow and all that. But yeah, it's when it comes to this kind of fit, let's get to this, like, we're going to say late winter, early spring. What are your go-to baits when you're up there fishing, beating the banks and stuff like that? When they're starting to make that migration towards the back on the secondary points in the docks, what are your go-to baits?
I like a spinnerbait a lot. When the water's got some color, I love throwing spinnerbaits at laydowns. I can do that all day. Like we were talking before earlier, I can go someplace like Briery and throw a spinnerbait. And then plastics are kind of the other ones. A D-bomb, as that water starts getting into that, 50s, 55, we start getting close to where they're thinking about spawn. And something about that bait for me is just, I don't know. I got a lot of confidence in it. I know I'm going to get bites and some quality bites, and I'm spending a lot of time focusing on wood with that thing. If I was fishing something like Smith, I'd probably be leaning heavy on a jerk bait. And then I've gotten to, I can't say that I'm great with cranking, but Smith is one of the places where I've, flat shot, I've done pretty well. There was a bass cast event where, I was playing around with it and caught a real good fish, just playing around with the frit side. And I like the Spro Little John too. You can sling that thing real well.
Yeah.
I like throwing that stuff covering water. And then if I had to pick a third, probably that 48. You mentioned it in the intro. I really like that on a weighted wacky hook, 16th ounce when it's colder. I caught them at the fork tournament we were talking about, where it was what James finished. Was he second?
He was second or third in that event. I can't remember. Yeah.
I remember you guys were crushing them. I went back and watched the video. You guys using the jerk baits and live scope. What lake's like 6 foot low.
Yeah, trees are sticking up everywhere.
But I think that tournament I caught one fish the first day, and I threw jerk bait, Carolina rig. I can't remember if I threw a jig very much, but I tried what I thought was more traditional cold weather stuff. And the second day I was like, I'm out of it, and I'm just going to go try to get bites. And I picked up that stupid little 16th ounce, weighted jig head with a 48 on it, and just started pitching it and just waiting, counting while it sinks. And I ended up with 95 inches that day, fishing 6-pound line and that little finesse stuff around timber. So I cut a check barely in that tournament. And I feel like I think the water was in the low to mid 40s. It was cold.
Yeah.
And I've done pretty well with sort of that same deal on Smith. It's, I don't know, I got confidence where if they're going to eat something, I feel like that's one of the things they'll eat.
Yeah. It's definitely a good bait. It's got a good fall. I know a lot of guys like throwing Cincos and all that stuff, but I've done some pool comparisons with the 48 and the Cinco, and it definitely has a different quiver when it falls, you know what I mean? A different shimmy. But it's still got a good fall to it. It's still a good bait. And you don't hear a lot of people talk about it as much, but man, it works. It's just, it don't have that Cinco name that everybody's thrown for years. You know what I mean? Everybody's scared to get away from that bait. And right now with them things costing $7-8 a pack, I'm like, man,
yeah.
I'm all right.
I've got a bajillion bags of the 48, and I've played with different colors, and I mean, I think kind of I buy into the general rules, sort of the translucence in the clear water, green pumpkin everywhere. Excuse me, and your darker colors in your dirtier water. But like I've sat in crystal clear water in Potomac creeks, and looking at fish and caught them on June bug. And then played around. Oh, let me switch to green pumpkin and catch one on green pumpkin, and then switch to watermelon red and catch them on that. And there's times where I don't think it makes a difference what the color is. No. It's just something about that. It looks like it's a easy meal. It definitely falls slower to Senko, but that with that 16th ounce weight, it's pretty close in it. At least the Senko still might be faster, but it's in the same ballpark then. But shoot around grass when the fish are up shallow or the grass is not quite topped out, but it's getting there. You without any weight, you can throw that thing in there and keep it right there above it, and watch them come up and eat it out of the grass too. So I got a lot of confidence in that bait.
Well, it lasts a lot longer too. Where a Cinco is salted, you're not going to get as much out of a Cinco as you are the 48. And like I said, that's why it falls faster. The Cinco falls faster because it's loaded with salt. So like I said, you throw a flick shake head on there, something like that, it falls, it gets that good, quicker fall to it. So yeah, phenomenal bait for sure. What are some areas that you're looking for this time of the, late winter, early spring? Are you starting at the mouth and working your way back, or do you just go straight to like mid creek and work your way back? How do you,
I'd probably start towards the mouth and work my way back. But being in a kayak, it's
harder to do that.
Yeah, it depends on what the creek is. So I'll try to pick something that's a smaller area that I can actually manage. if you can find a place that's got maybe a couple different pockets that are nearby to where, if you do find them on the mouths, you can run to a couple other places and not spend your, half your day running.
Yeah.
I'll try to look at that sort of stuff. And then I like getting out of the wind. I know there's certain baits the wind helps, but there's times where I'm looking for those northern type banks that are protected from that wind, or just wherever I can go and not get blown around. And, and I can make my cast. It's a little tricky. It's not hard to skip something like a 48 or even a jig, but it's a lot harder when you got the chop on the water. It's a lot.
Smith's got a lot of that.
Yeah.
Smith, especially during summertime, it's really hard. So, but no, that's some good information. I just wanted to kind of get a little bit of in depth there because we're about to that time. I mean, I know we got a lot of cold weather going on in Virginia and the East Coast with snow and ice and rain, and but this rain coming in is going to get the backs of those creeks dingy. They're going to start turning colors, and I think them bait fish. I mean, there's a lot that's already back there now. It's surprising how much bait fish are always in the back of a creek during the wintertime. Certain creeks. Yeah. Like you go to Smith, like I don't want to name too many creeks here because people watch. But there's several creeks. Yeah. There's several creeks that just hold them all year long. You go back there and the stripers are back there just like a buffet, it's one creek. I actually was talking with Dennis Stump that the seagulls were crazy in there. Like, I mean, it was like they were it was a huge flock of seagulls there, but you go in there, the bait, you don't see a lot of bass in there with them. You know what I mean? And if you do see them, they're so honed in on the bait that when you put something near them, they either spook or they just watch it go by on the live scope and they don't even react to it. You know what I mean? And I've seen some stuff on social media where guys were taking pictures on some lake form, and you're like, man, you think this creek would be loaded with all the seagulls in here, but hey, I ain't getting a bite. And I was reading through the comments, and everybody's talking about that. And I think it's so much bait fish that the bass are just like, they're so honed in on it. You know what I mean? They're so tuned in on it that they don't want it. But getting back to it, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of rain coming. There's going to be a lot of conditions that are going to be changing here in the next several weeks. And like I say, I think those fish are going to start moving back there. They're going to start feeding on them shad a little bit more. And like I say, baits like you're talking about, 48s and spinner baits. I'm like you, man. I love throwing a spinner bait. And you get in these creeks with some lay downs, man, it's hard to beat a spinner bait. It's so versatile. You know what I mean? You can kill it, let it sink down. You can do all kinds of stuff with spinner bait. I love it.
It's pretty weedless. I used to think it, it'd hang up on everything, but the more I fish it, the more I'm impressed with what you can bring those things through.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll hang it up every once in a while, but as long as you're kind of going with the growth of the tree and not bringing it back into forks and stuff, it comes through the cover pretty clean. And now, you ever throw a single Colorado?
Not a single. I throw it was a double Colorado, but the front one was really, really small. I actually got that from a friend of ours, Skylar Hamilton. When I rode with him on, it was Bassmasters Classic. I was a marshal, and he was killing them at Gunnersville on this bait. And I'm like, God dang, dude, I got to get me one. And so he handed me one, and after that, we ordered a bunch of them. But when I went back to Gunnersville, I throw them, and I'm starting to throw them more around Smith too. Like, you get a little bit of dinge. It's got a copper blade on it. And I don't know what it is about this time of the year. It just seems like copper on something, whether it's spinnerbait or whatever, just is, it does pretty good. But no, I haven't thrown many just single Colorado blades though.
I like it. It thumps hard. It's the closest thing. Like, to me, it's like a chatterbait type vibration, like where it'll knock the fillings out of your teeth. It thumps so hard, and everybody throws a chatterbait anymore. So I like trying to do stuff that's different from what everybody else is doing. And those single Colorados, I got a lot of confidence in when that water's a little bit colder.
Yeah,
I like some of the other ones. Different conditions. It's all about conditions for me. But when the water's got some color and it's cold, something about that that single Colorado, and man, they smack it too. It's like you don't have to wonder was that a fish? It's
they hit it, they slam it,
and you watch the line jump it. And it's fun. It's fun.
I tell you another spinnerbait that's worth checking out. I don't know if you throw it or not. It's the Z-Man Finesse. I cannot think what. Oh yeah.
Sling blade.
Yeah, the sling blade. There you go. I actually got a video where I was hammering them on that, and I was actually reluctant and wouldn't even show that video because I was eating them up on that bait. So, but
I played with it a little bit, and I've thrown a little bit for smallmouth too. The only knock I have is it's not the thickest wire, so it's
very thin.
Break.
Yeah,
and I've caught, I think one day I had 12, maybe 15 fish that were relatively small. So I'm thinking, okay, I didn't really have any big ones, so the blade's going to be okay. But just that, bending it's just like a paper clip. You only got so many times bending that thing out before it's going to snap.
Yeah, I lost it. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say you can still catch some good fish. You just got to, keep in the back of your head what the count is for that particular bait.
Yeah. I've lost a giant on the KBF when the KBF came to Smith Mountain a couple years ago. Casey Reed won it. And I got on a spinnerbait bite on the main channel early in the morning. Like when it was a slight breeze blowing on the rock banks. And man, I was just, and then I got to a point where they just started sideswiping it. But when I had a big one hit that thing, and I mean, I'm talking like 6-7 pounds, roll up, hit it. And I was getting up by the boat and gearing to net them, and the spinnerbait broke. It broke at the head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should have changed it. I knew, like in the back of my head, because I caught several that were like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. And I'm like, I need to change this bait. I need to change it. But man, it's such a lucky bait right now. It's doing it. And then that happened. And I was like, oh man, that's not good. So, but when it comes to spinnerbait fishing, man, a lot of the old timers I always talk to, like when I fish the Federation, is they love buying them from this guy. I can't remember. It was an older guy that used to make them. And they're all thin wire. They loved thin wire spinnerbaits, but that's what they always talk about. You only catch 2 or 3 on them, and they just throw them in the bottom of the boat because
I think it's True South. True South. I've got some of their stuff, and it's on the lighter side. But I think the trade-off with that is you feel that vibration really well. You don't have as much resistance with that thicker gauge of wire. So that thin wire, you feel every time that blade's turning. So yeah, I like some of those True South ones that have that real thin wire too. But the one, and I don't even want to talk about it, but that Covert series that Jason Christie, that especially the single Colorado, I've played around with a bunch of different combinations, and I've found that it's the wire's not as thick, but it also doesn't, I don't know, whatever's in it, it's different. It's not those old school what was that?
Titanium.
Titanium. It's not the ones that you could twist them up and they snap back, but it's I've been happy with the durability on those. I don't get them all bent up and twisted out to where it and it thumps pretty good. So if I had to pick a single spinnerbait to throw this time of year in the dirtier water, it'd probably be that. But like I said, those True South ones, there's a place for those too with that thinner wire.
That's actually the ones I was talking about earlier. That's the double Colorado. That's what those were True South. Yeah.
I've got several.
Yeah, the white. I like those. The only thing I hate about it is how this. I mean, that's old style too, but I hate how the skirts are because if you don't keep them stored properly, they get kind of out of shape because they're like that old rubber. They're not like the silicone. Yeah. So you got to be careful with those. But I mean, yeah, they're good. They're good spinnerbaits. I really like them. So, but I was going to ask you earlier if it was chatterbait or spinnerbait. Like if you threw them much, because like. There for a while, like the kayak scene, it was like if you wasn't throwing a chatterbait, you didn't even know how to fish. You know what I mean? Like everybody was throwing a chatterbait, and that's what I was going to ask you. Did you throw a chatterbait much this time of year?
Places like Smith, not as much, just because of the way that the lake sets up. If I was around some dirtier stuff, I would. And grass, it's a no-brainer. It was hard for me to put it down down in Florida. And another bait that's sneaky that I don't think many guys throw. Garrett Wade has done real well on it. Minimax, Chatterbait Minimax. He's the only other guy that I talk to that I know is throwing that a lot of the time. Everybody else is throwing the Evo or the Jackhammer or now what is it, the Tungsten Evo?
Yeah,
but something about that smaller bait and a smaller blade. It's a different vibration. I don't know. I got a lot of confidence in that little thing, and I've caught some big fish on it too.
Yeah, it's definitely. I've got a couple people I know that, though I don't want to say them because of the areas they fish, but I know some guys that throw them that they really like that mini max, and I don't throw it. I need to. I haven't even bought any. Sorry, I got something in my eye that's like been bugging me to death right now. But I just never. I don't know, man. I'm old school now. I try not to. I'm like, I really like to buy that bait, but I don't need no more. Like I just need to buy what I use, but I'll get some more of them and put them in there. But real quick before we let you go, man, because we're in an hour here. I didn't realize it's crazy how time go when you're talking fishing. But you also do another podcast as well. We were talking about this earlier, and I didn't realize it until I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. I seen that video clip come up. You were talking, and then I seen one you were doing with, I think, Christine Fisher or something like that. You were doing a podcast with her, and tell everybody, most probably know that, that listen to a lot of podcasts and probably heard you, but talk about the podcast show that you're doing right now.
Yeah, it was just kind of a lucky opportunity for me. It wasn't something I ever really, thought of doing, but I had the good fortune of running into Bailey Egbert, the host over on the Serious Angler Network, and he brought it up one day. He was thinking about doing a kayak themed show, or focusing a little heavier on the kayak than some of the other stuff. And I got to thinking about it, and it just, the two of us kind of started it, and I'm doing it now. I guess I've been doing it solo for a little bit now. Bailey kind of took the training wheels off, but it's been fun. I enjoy it because I'm not the best at a lot of techniques. There's a lot of things that I know I'm not the best at, but I've been fortunate to be able to talk to people that are better than me at them. Like that Christine episode was one where I was curious just to talk about muskie fishing, something that I started seeing them a lot this year on the rivers, and I don't really know how to catch them, and she's good at it. So I was like, hey, tell me how to catch some muskie. But it's been a lot of fun. I try to make it educational, and sometimes, I've got information to help people, and most of the time it's the guests that are dropping the real juice. But yeah, it's been fun. We're affiliated with the Serious Angler Network, and it's just Kayak Fishing Weekly. We've started a separate YouTube page, and there's, we don't have the biggest following there. I think we get a lot more people listening through the podcast channels, but it's been fun. And every once in a while you read, and somebody will leave a nice message on there that they're enjoying the show, and it makes you feel good. So I've enjoyed, like we're doing now, just talking fishing, man. It's you even after it could be the worst day of work, but talking fishing at the end of the day is always makes it better.
Yeah, well, it just kind of frees your mind of everything that's going on. No matter how stressful the day is, like you said, you come home and you kind of step away from that. It's kind of like being out on the water. You get out on the water and you don't think about the normal life stuff until you get back to the boat ramp, and then you're like, all right, but when you're out there, nothing else exists except for what you're doing at that moment. And as podcasting, it's kind of the same thing. It's, you get in here, you're talking fishing, you're connecting with people of the same hobby, and nothing else matters at the moment. You know what I mean? Just talking fishing and learning from one another. And even, we're talking about podcasting, even going to these events and fishing, like we're talking about as a co-angler, or just going into these kayak events and meeting at the meetings and talking and growing friendships with others. And I mean, that's how I met you, was, just kind of fishing some of these events. I mean, I've heard about you, when you were winning and having good events and all that. And then we kind of stayed at the same house with Drew Gregory and them, and just kind of built that relationship, and we see each other at different tournaments. But you learn from these guys, you kind of start small conversations and learn from one another. So it's like I say, podcasting and this is just, it's just like having a meetup somewhere. You just learn so much. You get to talk with everybody. So, but Justin, I really appreciate you coming on with us tonight, man. I'll wrap it up. I know it's been a little over an hour here talking, and but like I say, I want everybody to make sure y'all go over and follow me. Would you say it was Serious? I know it's Serious Angler, but
Kayak Fishing Weekly on YouTube, and then if you just Kayak Fishing Weekly on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, any of the main, basically anywhere you get podcasts, just Kayak Fishing Weekly.
That's right. Make sure you go check them out. Listen to the show. They do have a really good show. I've started listening to more of them now, and y'all have some good content. So, but I appreciate you coming on, man. I appreciate you talking fishing. Good luck to you the rest of this year. I'm hoping that you can get out there and cash more checks, get some good points, and make at least the championship. So, but other than that, man, I like I say, I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you on the water. And maybe one day I can get you out on the bass boat. All right, man.
Some of the mountain fish.
Yeah. We'll have to go out sometime. I'm gonna try to go out tomorrow, but I got to drop the kids off at school first, and they got a 2-hour delay, so I ain't gonna be able to go in the water as quick as I want to. So, I'm gonna try to go out tomorrow, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes. It's 40 degrees, and I don't know. The older I've gotten, the more of a weenie I've become when getting out there in that cool weather. So,
dude, get out there and smash them.
That's right. Well, man, I appreciate you, Justin. You have a good one, buddy.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, buddy. See you. All right, guys. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that conversation. I always enjoy talking with Justin. He's a really great dude, really humble dude. And just the times that we've had traveling and been able to stay at the same house with him, it's always been fun. So, but if you did enjoy this, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening on to the podcasts, make sure you give us a good review if you can, and leave us a comment down below what you liked about the show, or if there's something we need to, change up, audio, whatever. I think right now we finally got our audio where it's pretty good now. So, but if you're saying something you think we need to change up, we're always open for suggestions. And if you got some guests that you'd like to hear from or techniques that you'd like to learn about, make sure you put them in the comments, or you can email us at oneobjectivebf at gmail.com. And also make sure you go check out oneobjectivebf.com. We are changing the website. We're getting some more tackle on there. I've been changing up the website to make it more user-friendly for everybody to find products. And we're trying to get, like I say, more tackle. We got some more stuff that's going to be coming out for the XTR. For you guys that just got those, make sure you go check that out. We got a lot of stuff for the XTR right now. And then we got, bow mounts for just about all the major companies out there right now. So make sure you go check them out as well. So, and if you're into wanting to get your kayak rigged for the year, you can also contact us so we can get you some quotes and get you in the shop and try to get it done. So other than that, guys, we will talk to you later. See ya.